When the world freezes at 11 hours 59 minutes and 59 seconds, Alan Mercer is the only one left moving, alone in a suspended moment where sound vanishes and time forgets to chime. But in the silence, something begins to stir. Memories he never meant to find, secrets he never dared to face. As time stands still, Alan is forced into a confrontation not with the world, but with himself, and the horrifying truths buried deep beneath the noise of his life. In a reality where silence speaks louder than time, what happens when the only way forward is through the past you tried to forget? The moment arrived without ceremony. A half step between seconds. A silence not earned but imposed, surgically precise, slicing through the fabric of time itself. Alan Mercer was staring at the wall clock above his fireplace when it happened. The hands froze mid-tick. Not at midnight. Not at noon. 11 hours 59 minutes and 59 seconds and some sliver of a second that shouldn't have been perceptible, but was. It was not the absence of sound that startled him. It was the presence of silence. It had mass, it pressed into his temples, clung to his skin like humidity in a room with no air. He stood. His chair didn't creak. His breath made no sound. The world had paused. He walked to the window. Outside, a crow hung in the air, wings spread in eternal effort, suspended above the street. A child's red balloon, mid-ascent, was locked between ground and sky. The leaves on the trees did not flutter. The world had forgotten how to move. Alan didn't know if he was dreaming. He didn't know if he was alone. He turned back to the room and said, just to test, "Hello." No sound. His lips moved. His throat worked. But the air refused to carry his voice. Silence, complete and unnatural, devoured the room. Chapter 2. The gravity of stillness. First, the silence was a puzzle. He clapped. No sound. He dropped a glass. It shattered noiselessly, pieces skittering like dry ice across the wooden floor. But then he noticed something stranger. A hum inside his own head, a frequency like an itch behind the eyes. It wasn't coming from outside. It was coming from within. He sat. His memories began to move. Not like a stream but a swarm. Images, long buried, long denied, stirred to life. His mother's face, pallid in the hospital bed. Her hand trembling when she tried to brush his cheek. The words she tried to speak but never got the chance. The day she died, Alan had been out. The movies. He'd silenced his phone. The guilt had faded, but in this new reality, silence had a way of reactivating decay. Now the memory had texture. Her eyes, full of something between apology and terror, stared back at him, not through a phone, but as though she were beside him, watching. Chapter 3. The echoes within. Alan tried the door. It opened. The air outside the apartment was as still and silent as inside. He stepped into the hallway. The old woman who lived across from him stood frozen, hand midway to knocking on his door, mouth open in conversation that never would be. Alan walked past her. He touched her hand. It was warm. He descended the stairs, out into the street, where the world was a sculpture garden. Cars, people, birds, all trapped in one eternal moment. But Alan was moving, thinking, feeling, and he was remembering. It wasn't just his mother. It was the boy, Jeremy. The name surfaced with the weight of a stone dislodged in a cave wall. His childhood friend. The one who had gone missing. The last day he saw Jeremy, they had been playing near the quarry. Alan remembered the argument. Push. A fall. A splash. But never telling anyone. Never speaking it aloud. The police never found the body. Jeremy had become one of those ghost stories in the neighborhood. Alan had forgotten. No, he had buried it. And the silence had unearthed it. Chapter 4. The Museum of Frozen Things. The longer he walked, the louder his mind became. Not voices, but the collisions of thought and guilt and memories pressing into one another. The silence outside carved space for the noise within. He found the house on Ridgeway Lane. He hadn't been back in 30 years. The windows were dark. Inside, the furniture looked exactly as it had. He stepped through the unlocked door. Jeremy's jacket was still on the hook. Of course it couldn't be. But it was. He picked it up. It was wet. He moved through the house like a sleepwalker. Each room a reliquary of suppressed truth. In the basement, the old pool table was covered in dust. On it a small red cap. Alan staggered back. He had told himself Jeremy had left. That he had run away. But now, in the basement of a house abandoned by time, the reality refused to hide. A door creaked, but there was no sound. It opened anyway. And from the dark, a shape emerged. Chapter 5. The boy who never left. He didn't scream. He couldn't. Jeremy's eyes were the same. Pale blue. Curious. Accusing. Alan backed away, heart pounding in an unbearable silent drumbeat. The boy stood there dripping. His mouth moved. No sound. But Alan heard it. You left me. The words weren't audible. They were received. Imprinted. Alan dropped to his knees. I didn't know what to do. I was a kid. I was scared. The silence did not forgive. Jeremy stepped forward. Reached out a hand. Alan flinched. But the hand didn't strike. It simply rested on his shoulder. Warm. Then the boy was gone. Chapter 6. Temporal inversion. Outside the crow still hung. The balloon still hovered. But Alan had changed. He returned to his apartment. The clock still read 11 hours 59 minutes and 59 seconds. But now the silence had rhythm. Patterns. Like the spaces between notes in a funeral march. He began writing. Not letters. Not confessions. Catalogs. Each memory he had avoided. Each truth he had bent into forgetfulness. They emerged like fossils from a thawing tundra. His father's anger. His sister's disappearance. A fire. He had never connected them all. But now, in the silence, they arranged themselves into a structure. And he was its architect. Chapter 7. The Chime. The final secret took the longest. His own face. He looked into the mirror. Not just the face of a man but the expressions of the boy within. The liar. The watcher. The one who let things happen. He stared until he remembered the thing even silence didn't want to show. The night of the fire. The locked door. His sister screaming behind it. And him outside, holding the key, shaking, refusing to open it because he thought it would teach her a lesson. 'Cause he was angry. She had died in that fire. Officially, no one knew why the door wouldn't open. But he did. He had known all along. Chapter 8. Time resumes. When he wrote the last word, the clock moved. The crow flew. The balloon rose. The woman knocked. Sound returned. Life resumed. Alan sat, blinking in the noise, the motion, the chaos of time resuming. But inside there was still silence. And in that silence, he heard the chime. Not from the clock. From the truth. From the moment the silence gave him back everything. Chapter 9. Residuals. Even though time resumed, Alan was no longer part of its rhythm. He walked through his days as though dragging chains. The world had returned to motion, but he moved as if submerged in molasses. The silence had not left him. In the white noise of everyday life, the distant whir of traffic, the babble of morning radio, he still heard it. Beneath it all, a sub-frequency of memory. He no longer dreamed. Or rather, he no longer distinguished dreams from waking life. One morning he walked to the police station and asked to file a report. He told them about the fire. His sister. The silence in the officer's eyes when he was done reminded him of the frozen world. They didn't arrest him. They didn't question him. They didn't believe him. But Alan hadn't come for justice. He came to open the door. Chapter 10. The Whisper Library. He began visiting places connected to memories he'd buried. The schoolyard. The hospital. The quarry. In each, he sat in silence. And the silence answered. Not in words. In impressions. Jeremy's breathless laughter echoing from empty corridors. His sisters singing, bleeding faintly from stone and soil. He realized the silence wasn't an absence. It was a container, library, memory vault, and somehow he had become its only reader. Chapter 11. Inverse choreography. People around him began to comment. Not about the things he said. He rarely spoke now, but about how he looked when he wasn't looking at anything. "You zone out sometimes," his neighbor told him. "Like you're listening to something none of us can hear." He was. The silence had become sentient. It began offering memories he hadn't lived. His father's regrets. His mother's disappointment. Jeremy's last thought beneath the water. His sister's confusion, then terror. He could feel their emotions. Live them. Absorb them. And it was too much. Chapter 12. The Archivist. He began writing again, but not catalogs. Now they were entries. Jeremy's final breath. Father's night terrors. Mother's unspoken diagnosis. He did not know who he was writing for, but he knew it had to be done. The silence demanded transcription. In writing he discovered patterns, connections between events that had always seemed random. His life was not chaos. It was conspiracy. And he was the keeper of its record. Chapter 13. The Second Freeze. It happened again. At 11 hours 59 minutes and 59 seconds, the clock forgot to chime. And time stopped. But this time Alan expected it. He was ready. He sat in the center of his apartment, pen in hand, and waited for the silence. Came. And with it came the final archive. Not memories. Not voices. Vision. Room. Circular. Endless. Every wall a mirror. Every mirror a moment. He walked through it. He saw his life. Not as a sequence but as a simultaneity. All moments coexisting. All mistakes still alive. In the center of the room, a child. Himself. No older than 6. He held the key to the door. He looked up at Alan. And said, with a voice full of the silence, "Forgive me." Chapter 14. Sound. When time resumed, it did so with a scream. Alan's scream. But it wasn't pain. Or fear. It was release. His neighbor rushed in. She found him collapsed, crying. She held him. No questions. No judgment. Only warmth. For the first time the silence receded. Not completely but enough. He knew it would return. But now he welcomed it. Not as punishment, but as penance.